Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we have a meta discussion for you guys. We're going to be going over the Atlas Collectables POG 2020 Championships. This is a super cool tournament. We just wanted to go over all the best decks and some of the not so great decks for you guys, so you have the best possible information on what to play. We have lists for you guys, and we really hope you enjoy the video. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to our channel, it really helps us out. A couple other links in the description you can check out. You can also find our Battlefy link for our invitational series in our Discord, which is linked in the description. And without further ado, let's just get right into this video. So, what is the POG Championships? The POG Championships is an unofficial Pokemon TCG tournament that's created in place of the World Championships. It's a super cool tournament run by awesome people. We're obviously going to be playing in it, and we hope you guys all check it out as well. It is a free-to-play tournament. Many of the best players are going to be participating, and we wanted to go over some of the best decks. So, first off, let's go over the most anticipated deck of the format, Eternatus VMax. So, this is the list we've got for you guys. Eternatus VMax is a super powerful Pokemon. Its ability makes it absolutely amazing. The main purpose of the deck is just to use Dread End, and you can do up to 270 damage with that, and as you can see, we have a bunch of other Dark Tool cards. What are your thoughts on the deck?
I think that with the Zigzagoons and the Scoop Up Nats, it's really amazing. It's just Bellaba and Bryson Man is an amazing counter to it.
Yeah, Bellaba is a really good counter to the deck.
Mm-hmm.
The Zigzagoons and Scoop Ups are also amazing. Very good point there. You have Yveltal GX with Doom Count GX to really make it difficult for your opponent to build up huge Pokemon without them always being in danger of getting knocked out. In terms of other options for the deck, you can really play any sort of dark Pokemon you want. You really just gotta have those Crobats, those Eternatus, and Eternatus VMax. Unless you're willing to spend a lot of packs or money on the deck, I really wouldn't recommend this deck. But if you're able to get the cards for it, it's a super strong deck, and I would totally recommend it. So, the next deck we're going to talk about here is Vikavolt V. It's a super cool deck. We have the Paralyzing Bolt attack, kind of reminiscent of Seismitoad EX, that item locks them, does 50 damage for a Lightning and a Colorless. Obviously, right now, before rotation comes around, there are so many tools that Lightning can use, such as Thunder Mountain, and Tapu Koko Prism Star, and Electro Power. And then we also have cards such as like Turbo Patch, Speed Energy, Cape of Toughness, and they all make this deck super, super powerful. You can really slow down the pace of the game, and then out of nowhere have a super powerful Super Zap Cannon for ridiculous amounts of damage. You see the Vikavolt there on the right side of your screen. I believe it's a super strong deck. I had it built, and it was testing pretty well. There are some decks it has a little bit of trouble dealing with if they can just not play items and still just do really well. Any other thoughts on the deck?
Like, when you look at the list, it's so consistent. And with all that support, it's nearly unstoppable unless you play a deck that doesn't rely on items.
Yeah, it's super powerful. It can totally put a screw in other players' plans. This is a more consistent turbo-ish version of the deck, but you can also play it with cards like Mareep to put your opponent asleep and then item lock them. You can play it with cards like Crushing Hammer to slow down the game even more. There are so many variants of the deck, and it's a super, super powerful card that should definitely be checked out for the event, or you should at least know how to beat the deck if you're going into the event with a different one. So the next deck we're going to be talking about is Centiskorch VMax. It's a pretty powerful VMax Pokemon, similar to Eternatus, but so different in that it's a completely different type, and its attack is very different. You have Gmax Centiferno, which does 40, plus 40 more for each fire energy attached to it, which might sound hard to build up. Maybe you can do 80, 120 damage, but really it gets super easy to build up energy because you have Welder to put 2 energies on there. Of course, you have your attachment, but then you also have Volcanion with Flare Starter. If you go second, you can put 3 fire energies from your deck onto your board super easily. It's a really cool deck. You have so many, of course, fire also has a bunch of support. Any other thoughts on the deck?
Well, I mean, it's just, with Volcanion and Welder combined, you have so much energy. You can knock out another VMax or tag team, and then out of nowhere, just Heatran for game.
Yeah, it's super powerful. It should be pretty popular. It's not super expensive. It is still a little bit expensive, but I highly recommend it. It's a pretty cool deck. So the next deck we're going to talk about is probably one of the best decks in the entire format. I would say it's the best deck in the format. It's most likely going to be the deck I'm going in with for the POG Championships. This is ADP Zacian. This is my current list. On the screen, of course, we have that Altered Creation GX attack that allows your Pokemon to do 30 extra damage and take extra prizes for just 2 energy. And then, of course, Zacian V is an absolutely amazing attacker. Can swing for 260 after the Altered Creation. It's a super straightforward deck. You just ideally use that Altered Creation as soon as you can and just win the game with Zacian after using Boss's Orders onto something like Crobat, Dedenne, another Zacian, Boltund V, anything that has less than 260 HP. Any other thoughts on the deck? I think it's pretty straightforward, though.
I think the Milotic is an interesting tech, but it definitely helps, and it's very consistent. If you can get an Altered Creation turn 1 and then a Brave Blade or Ultimate Ray KO turn 2, you have a great lead.
Yeah, it's very true. Melodic is mainly for Centiskorch VMax, which we covered on the last slide, because you can one-shot their Centiskorch VMaxes, and so that gives you a pretty favorable matchup so long as you don't prize Melodic. You also have a decent matchup versus Eternatus VMax, because they're going to have to bench multiple Crobat. And Vikavolt V isn't a terrible matchup either, because Zacian is able to just pretty easily one-shot it. If you're just able to go, if you're able to just avoid bricking and get some energy piled up, and then just use Brave Blade onto their Vikavolt twice and win the game.
With the Professor's Research, the Bird Keepers, and the Eldegoss, Intrepid Sword 2, it's just Vikavolt. They can lock you, but you can just draw a bunch of cards.
Yeah, you can draw a bunch of cards. Obviously, you can't use cards like Switch, but Ultimate Ray is also a pretty good attack. You can do 180 after Altered Creation. And it's just a super strong deck, probably the deck I'm going in with. Just super strong, super straightforward. Definitely consider it. A lot of players already have the cards for it because it's been around for a few sets. You just need a couple new cards in Crobat and potentially Melodic if you didn't already have that. So the next deck we're going to be talking about is a deck that's been around for quite a long time. This is the Baby Blacephalon deck. It's a really powerful deck. You just swing with Fireball Circus for absurd amounts of damage. You can use your support attackers, or you can just go straight in with Baby Blounds. We have all kinds of support in the deck. It's pretty consistent, or as consistent as you can make a deck like this. Obviously, it's super item reliant and stuff, so it might fold to a deck like Vikavolt, but we've added double V into the deck to try and improve that matchup a little bit. The only new card from Darkness Ablaze is going to be that Crobat V, just for a little bit of added consistency in some situations. And it's a super strong deck. I'd totally recommend it if you're looking for something relatively cheap, not as expensive as something like Eternatus, Centiskorch, anything like that. Probably the deck my brother is going to be going in with. Any other thoughts on the deck? Because I know you're pretty experienced with it, and you're probably going in with it.
Yeah, so I don't like that the Beastbringer got cut, but it had to be cut. The Vikavolt matchup definitely is favored for Vikavolt, but double does improve your chances a lot, because if you Welder to it, it can normally one-shot a Vikavolt.
Definitely great points. Pretty good in the meta. Definitely has a decent chance against anything. I would totally recommend it. But I think it's a little bit too risky to just bring to an event, for me, at least, because sometimes you'll just brick and you'll just lose. But I think it's definitely pretty strong if you draw at least decently. But we have some cards like Zacian and Oricorio and Heat Factory to just help us draw a couple extra cards.
Mm-hmm.
So the next deck we're going to be talking about is Pikachu and Zekrom, a huge winner of the last format. This deck just won the Sunday Open. It's pretty strong. Really, the only new additions are going to be Birdkeeper and Vikavolt V, two pretty underwhelming additions. Vikavolt V definitely helps the Baby Blacephalon matchup to maybe make it like slightly closer to 50-50 than the 60-40 it was last format. Full Blitz, super powerful attack. You just use Full Blitz, you can charge up your Pokemon really easily. Tag Bolt GX can do huge amounts of damage. Tandem Shock, great support. Plenty of different attackers in here that can be super, super good. Would totally recommend the deck, but I'd be a little bit scared of the Eternatus matchup. So if you're concerned about the Eternatus being a big deck, then I might stray away from Pikarom. But if you don't think you'll be hitting that many Eternatus, then I'd totally go for Pikachu and Zekrom. Because I would say if Eternatus was completely removed from the format, Pikarom would probably be able to come out on top almost every time. Any other thoughts?
It might use a Bellaba if in your testing you see a lot of Eternatus.
Yeah, I think Bellaba and Bryson Man could totally help the matchup a little bit, just to force your opponent to discard down to 3 bench Pokemon against Eternatus could totally make that matchup a little bit closer. I think it's just a tad bit inconsistent, because you really want to be playing cards like Volkner, Guzman, Hala, stuff like that. Definitely pretty helpful. But aside from that, pretty straightforward deck, pretty powerful deck. I'm not sure if I'd recommend it 100%, but it's good if you feel like you can beat the Eternatus matchup.
It's also especially aggressive. If you can get a turn on Full Blitz against a deck that's not Eternatus, you probably have a good chance.
Yeah, definitely a good point there. So the next deck we're going to be talking about is another one of the new decks in Decidueye with that Deep Force Camo ability. It prevents it from being hit by a lot of things, and then Splitting Arrow is an okay attack. You're almost certainly going to be losing to stuff that plays a lot of non-GX or V Pokemon. Another variant of the deck uses Decidueye and Obstagoon to try and beat out basics and GX and V Pokemon. But I think it really just comes down to, are you willing to bring this deck into a field that you have no idea how it's going to look in the end? It could just be all Centiskorch, and you might just lose because Volcanion can obliterate you, or it could be huge Eternatus and Pikarom heavy, and you can just beat everything super easily and have no trouble at all. We do have the Buzzwole and Pheromosa that helps the deck out a little bit. You can just take an extra prize card at the end of the game. You just have to hope that you don't start it, because that could put you at a huge deficit near the beginning of the game. We got Jirachi for some extra consistency. We have Rosa to help set up Decidueye very easily. Of course, Rare Candy allows you to completely skip Dartrix, but heavy Dartrix count in the list just to maximize consistency for the deck. We also have 4 Capture Energy that totally helps with the list at all. I think it's really just a good counter pick in the meta. I don't think there's too much to be said about it. I don't really think there's anything else, but do you have any other thoughts?
Well, the Dartrix really helps against Vikavolt because they lock out your Rare Candy. Also, it's a pretty cheap deck, so if you hit lots of VMax, V, and GX decks, like Vikavolt, Eternatus, Pikarom, then you should do well, but if there's a lot of Baby Blown and Centiskorch, it might not go so well.
Yeah, that's kind of what I just said, but definitely a good counter pick in the meta. If you feel like you're going to be hitting good matchups all day, then I'd totally recommend it. There are definitely some strong Decidueye believers out there, and I'd say just roll with it. If you like Decidueye, you can totally go in with it. It's pretty cheap. You can probably get the entire deck for under 50 virtual packs, which sounds like a lot, but it's not that difficult to get. You can just trade some of your like bulk GXs and stuff, and you could probably end up with the entire deck pretty quickly. So after Decidueye, the next deck we're going to be looking at is Zacian, Lucario, and Melmatal. The deck has changed a decent amount from when we saw it do decently well last season. It got top 8 at the Sunday Open. Full Metal Wall does make it decently strong. And Zamazenta V, which now has 3 copies, is definitely going to help out with the Centiskorch and Eternatus matchups. Not too much to be said about the deck. You probably already know what it does, because Zacian V, kind of just swing in with Brave Blade. You can use left metal to prevent damage onto it. Decimating Charisma, nothing too crazy here. Another new card is Bird Keeper, which we're seeing in some decks. It's still pretty good. It's just an extra switch effect, and then you draw 3. It's a pretty consistent list, because it's running like Acrobikes, and high support count, and Jirachis, and Crobat V. So, not too much else to be said about the deck, but do you have any other thoughts?
I think that it could use 2 Zamazentas. The 3 Zamazentas doesn't seem super necessary, but it definitely helps if you prize 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point, because you can totally mess up your opponent with just 1, but if you have like 2 or 3, sometimes it's unnecessary. In matchups like Blacephalon, it's going to be completely useless. You're just, actually it's just as good as Zacian, because you're really just taking 1-shots, but against something like, say, I don't know, like Pikachu and Pikarom, Zacian V is going to be so much better.
Yes.
But you got the deck, pretty simple, pretty straightforward. I'd recommend it if you're just looking for a deck that's not a huge meta call, but can definitely beat out some of the bigger decks if they're not prepared for your 3 Zamazentas, and just raw power Zacian and Metal Saucer.
And with the Metal Frying Pan, it really helps because Zamazenta, it makes them discard 6 energies to take 2 prizes if they're playing Baby Bounds. And you can just one-shot them for 3 energies.
Yeah, and then you also have Tapu Fini if you're still concerned about the Baby Blacephalon matchup. So, for Combo Zacian V, another pretty old deck, nothing super new. Of course, we have Turbo Hatch for the deck, but I think the list stayed mostly the same. It's a pretty strong deck. You can take extra prizes. Personally, I would say Zacian ADP is just a superior version of the deck. That's just my opinion. I don't think that too many people would disagree with me, but I'd totally go with the deck if it's a deck you're comfortable with and you feel like you're good at sequencing and stuff like that. It's a pretty consistent list. Any other thoughts?
I feel like with all the new things from Darkness Ablaze, ADP Zacian is better because you can get Alter Creation off turn 1 almost every game. Although, with Metal Saucer and Turbo Patch, sometimes you can get the combo of Brave Blade turn 1 and turn 2.
But I really don't think you want to be going for Brave Blade turn 1 regardless, because you just want to get a couple pieces into your hand to try and set up the combo. But I think it's definitely still a strong deck to go with if you feel comfortable with it. So next we have Malamar Toolbox, a deck that just keeps coming back, kind of straight away from the meta in the Rebel Clash format. But with Dragapult probably disappearing, Malamar is probably just going to be back in full swing. Or as good as it could be. It's a slightly more multi-prize Pokemon-oriented deck. We have Rhyperior and Melodic to try and help beat Eternatus and Centiskorch. And then we can also use Giratina for Baby Blacephalon and other 1-prize decks. And we can also use Latios GX, is GX attack, to try and beat out ADP Zacian to prevent them from using their GX attack.
If you're going second.
True. Or even if they miss their turn 1 Alter Creation.
Yes.
Mew V is another decent attacker against decks like Centiskorch that build up a lot of energy. Or you can just have like a big turn with it. Latios GX can also be decent against Pikarom. You can prevent their tag team Pokemon from damaging you. So if they have they just don't have that many energy on board, you can kind of just stall a turn with it. Rhyperior V is also good for that matchup because you can take big 1-shots with it. Mimikyu is good against Zacian decks because you can, if they use Brave Blade last turn, you can copy Brave Blade, and that's really good. I'd say it's a decent pick, but unfortunately, it's really difficult to make a consistent Malamar list. We have 4 Acrobike and 4 Treasure and 4 Quick Bowl, and you're still not going to be setting up every game. That's just the unfortunate truth, because you just have to play a lot of different cards to get the deck to work. I would totally recommend the deck if you're okay playing something a little bit risky. Honestly, as different as it is, I'd totally compare it to Baby Blounds. If you'd be willing to play one, I'd say you're okay playing either of them. I would say Malamar is a good meta call if you feel like your list is very consistent. This is the list I would go in with, but if you feel like you have a better list, then definitely go for it. I think it's a decent deck. Any other thoughts?
The Rhyperior V definitely helps the Eternatus matchup. It could use some spell tags, but I think it's fine the way it is because you can use Giratina's Distortion Door to get damage on Zacians if they use Metal Frying Pan, and then Mimikyu will still, most of the time, one-shot it.
Yeah, actually, on the contrary, I feel like Spell Tag is completely unnecessary because it frees up 4 deck spots that can be used for consistency.
I guess.
Because, like in the older version of Malamar, you weren't seeing stuff like Rhyperior and Melodic, of course, because decks didn't need to be countered like that. But, I think for Malamar to keep up, they need to maximize consistency, but have a couple of techs to make sure you can beat the decks you probably couldn't beat with just Giratina. So, it's a decent deck. I might go in with it if I felt that it was okay. I really don't like the deck, but if you feel like you're enjoying playing it and it's drawing well for you, then I'd say completely 100% go for it. So next you have mill and control variants. I kind of group these together because their goal is really just to do the same thing, just mill you out and slow the game down exponentially. Here I have my Makarga control list. I've actually really been enjoying playing it, but I feel like at the end of the day, you're going to lose to ADP Zacian, which is the most popular deck. So I would stray away from it, but if you feel like you can avoid enough ADP Zacian to do well, I would say 100% go for it, because aside from ADP Zacian, I feel confident that you can have a 60% win rate against every other deck. ADP Zacian, unfortunately, you're probably not doing well. You're only going to win like a third of the time. I was playing this deck a lot at the beginning of the format. I know it's only been a few days, but I played quite a few games with it, and I felt that it was pretty good, except when I hit ADP Zacian. I'm not sure if you have any other thoughts, but
I think Vikavolt might be a little bit favored because they shut off all your items, which is almost a third of the deck. And items are super important to get out your, like, Mareeps, your Slugmas, and Lucarios.
That's a very good point. That's another big part of the deck you really have to set up on turn 1. I think against Vikavolt, it can be a difficult matchup, although if you're able to just go Fluffy Pillow with a Forest in play, and you can prevent them from using, or from item locking you for 1 turn, then I feel like your chances actually exponentially improve, because then you can just play all the items from your hand. Once you've set up, I feel like items are very unnecessary. Just pop a couple Pokédoll down, and then set up your board. There's not too much they can do after that, because they'll be forced to discard energy and whatnot and draw through their deck pretty fast in order to keep the item locks coming if you are just able to put them to sleep a couple times.
Also, the Pokédolls, I feel like if you put too many down on turn 1, it could be very chaotic, because then you don't have enough room to set up the Oranguru, Lucario, and Mareep.
Yeah,
especially if you want to have the Zacian on the bench.
Because normally I try and go first with the deck. My bench will normally, ideally, it will look like a Sword and Shield Oranguru, a Slugma, a Zacian V, and then occasionally a Mareep, and occasionally a Pokédoll. That's just the ideal turn 1.
Mareep and Pokédoll are the things that you want to have in the active at all times.
Yeah. Ideally, at least. Occasionally you want Giraffe Rig in case you need to lost in something in your opponent's discard pile, like if they're playing Malamar or Mewtwo variants. Lieutenant Surge is really good. You can play multiple Belba, and then you can just use Burning Magma to finish off the game. Nothing too crazy with the deck. I think the energy count could be cut down a little bit, but aside from that, I think it's a good deck. If you think you can avoid ADP Zacian, or if you have some way to beat it, I'd say definitely go for this deck. So, after that, we have Mad Party. This deck only made top 32 at the Sunday Open, which is still relatively impressive, but you can just use Mad Party, do decent damage. I think this is a deck that's much better and expanded right now. If you're looking for like a pretty cheap deck that's kind of like, it's kind of a meme deck, honestly, at this point. I think it was kind of hyped, but it really just died down. I really don't think it's going to see too many results. I would go for it if you're just going to have fun. It's definitely a fun deck, and it can be a fun play. I really don't think there's too much else to be said about the deck. I really wouldn't play it. I think the list we have here is pretty ideal, but there really is not too much to be said about the deck.
Well, I think it's with the T-Breaks and Quick Balls and Roxy's, it's consistent, but also at the same time, it's kind of risky.
Yeah, I really wouldn't go for it, but if you feel like you're just going there for just playing the event to have fun, then you may as well just play Mad Party because it's a super fun deck.
Yeah.
And I think that it may see some results if enough people play it, but I guess we'll just see how the deck does. Because I think with the optimal list, it could actually be quite good. But as of right now, I would stray away from the deck. So that's going to bring it to the end of our main decks. For other possibilities, we have decks like Phalanx that are mainly to counter stuff like Eternatus and Pikarom. Reshiram and Charizard variants, whether that be greens or Ability Zard. They always kind of stick around in the meta. Charizard VMax. I feel like Centiskorch is just a superior version of the deck.
For sure.
Salamence VMax is just outclassed by stuff like Eternatus and Centiskorch. Mewtwo and Mew is, it just gets worse and worse with every expansion because you're not gaining any new cards and every other deck is. And now everything is really just one-shotting you, like Eternatus is, Centiskorch is, Babylounds is.
Yeah.
Dragapult should be... Dragapult's actually an incredibly strong deck in this format, except for its Eternatus matchup.
Yeah, that is terrible matchup.
Yeah, Eternatus is a very, very, very bad matchup, and you will just lose almost every time. But it's an incredibly strong deck if you feel like you're not going to hit any Eternatus. Sableye, yeah.
Or only one or two Eternatus. Because one or two Eternatus, you should be fine.
Because remember, you're able to go 7-3 and still make day 2 for a POG. So, and the last fringe deck we've come up with is going to be Sableye V with Crazy Claws. I think there are just better decks than it. You can totally play it if you feel like it's a good meta call. You can play it with Roxy or Flapple or something. Turbo Patch does make it a lot better.
It's pretty fun just to spread and annoy your opponent. Because you can spread and then just go in for the kill. With Turbo Patch, now Sableye V can just use Crazy Claws out of nowhere, and you can just, out of nowhere, destroy a VMax or V.
Yeah, definitely. But I think that these are all okay decks. If you feel like you have a good list for them, I'd say go for it. But overall, I would just go with one of the however many decks we listed before these. I don't think there's too much else to say about these. So, just a few closing things to think about. Just in terms of matchups, I think for each deck, it really just comes down to, do you think you can beat ADP Zacian, Eternatus,
and
Vikavolt, and Centiskorch? Those are probably the 4 main decks you're going to want to know how to beat. If you're playing one of them, you might want to see if you're able to beat the other 3. Aside from that, I think the meta is definitely still unknown. The set's only been out for a few days, and this is going to be the only event that uses this format, except for the ones that have already happened, or smaller ones that might happen in the future. Speaking of events that will happen in the future, make sure you check out our Invitational series. We would love to have you guys playing in that. We're going to have Darkness Ablaze packs. Every pack you guys put towards the event is going straight back to the prize pool. I'll be donating some of my own packs. I really hope you guys are able to play. Just let me know in the comment section below. There are going to be 4 total events that you can play in as the general public, and then if you get enough points, you'll be able to move into the Invitational. I think it should be a super fun event. Hopefully you guys all are able to enjoy it. I think that's going to about wrap up the meta discussion. anything you want to say to wrap it up?
I mean, most of the matchups are fine if you're playing a Eternatus, but if you're not, just watch out for the top 4 decks.
Yeah, definitely good advice. Make sure you're watching out for those 4 decks. But if you feel like you're able to beat them, I'd say you're probably very well poised to do well at the event. In terms of Day 2 decks, I think that you might want to stray away from something like ADP Zacian and move to something that might just be able to beat stuff more reliably, like Centiskorch or Eternatus. But I think that's what we're going to leave you with. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like on the video. Comment, tell us what your favorite deck for the tournament is going to be if you're going to be playing. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to check out more awesome content. We're going to be having more Darkness Ablaze stuff coming your way very soon. And we hope to see you next time.